Here we are with our last lecture of the course, and this may be my favorite stuff to talk about anyway. Although all of it is important, all of it is critical to know and to understand as you think about what you're going to do, whether you're going to try to promote in the organization that you're in, or whether you plan to transfer, whatever the case may be. All of it's important, but this is my favorite stuff. Let's talk a second about decision making. Decision-making in criminal justice is always a fascinating thing, primarily because, as you can see at the bottom of the slide, our decision-making is driven by discretion. Every decision, virtually every decision, should never make a generalization. Virtually every decision in criminal justice is driven by discretion. We have the ability to be very selective in the decisions that we make and how we make them. And the decision that we make for Jim may not necessarily be the decision that we make for Jane. And there are a whole bunch of reasons why, behind why that may be the case. But discretion is the hallmark of decision making in criminal justice. And it is critical to understand. So what exactly is a decision? Well, according to the book, it's a judgment or a choice between alternatives. So you have alternative A, you have alternative B, and you have to make a decision about what to do. So how do we make decisions? Well, oftentimes we gather all the facts and then we sit around and we think about it and we weigh the pros and we weigh the cons and we think about the benefits and the limitations, and then we make a decision. The problem with that kind of decision making, which is called bounded rationality, is that it requires all information necessary and it requires a lot of time to process it. We often don't have the luxury, especially in the kinds of jobs that we do in the criminal justice system, to make decisions in that way. So then we have the opportunity to engage in something called satisficing. And I'm guessing that most of you have not heard that term before. But it is actually the attainment of acceptable rather than optimal results. And let's face it, most of what we do in our world is trying to get the best possible outcome. It may not be the best outcome, but it is the best possible outcome given a number of different choices. So satisficing is a particularly important concept because what that really means is we are settling for something that is just short of what is optimal. Then, of course, there's the garbage can approach, which is essentially we have a ready-made answer to a problem. And then, so when problem A happens, we bring out solution A. And when problem B happens, we bring out solution B. And we use a one-size-fits-all approach. The problem, of course, when we make decisions like that is that people fall through the cracks. And what we are obviously doing is applying situations and constructs to people and places and things that aren't appropriate. But unfortunately, in the world we work in, we often use the garbage can approach. So we often use the very approach that is least effective for what we need to be doing. Obviously, decision making very much impacted by organizational culture. How your organization works, what it thinks is important, definitely drives decision making. And then, of course, the almighty politics. We don't want to forget that, and it's important. There are different decision-making styles. There's the directive approach, analytical approach, conceptual approach, behavioral approach. And really what they do is they fall on a continuum with autocracy or an autocratic approach on one side and a subordinate-centered approach on the other. What does that mean? Well, a directive approach is usually made by task-oriented people who require clarity. They will assign tasks and say, you have to solve X, Y, Z, or PDQ problem. Okay, but they expect an outcome. Analytical decision-making styles are made by people who are often ambiguous and who overanalyze, people who sit there and pontificate all day about all of the different things that might possibly maybe happen. While contingencies are always important to consider, oftentimes, again, in the world that we work in, we don't have the luxury of being able to sit back and think about all of those things. Most of the decisions that we make in the criminal justice world, with very few exceptions, are made fairly quickly. In some cases, and some of you I'm sure can attest to this, are really life and death decisions. And you can't really sit back and think analytically about a life and death decision. Conceptual decision-making styles are made by people who work well with people and who rely on discussion of possible outcomes. If your particular organization is thinking of changing their vacation policy or their sick time policy, it generally makes sense not only to not have an edict come from on high through communication directly from above, but how about getting together a group of people who may have certain concerns about vacation or sick time policy and have them sit around and hold a series of meetings so that you can try to come to some consensus on the issue. The more consensus that you can generate on any kind of policy or issue that you have in your organization, the better off you're going to be, because what consensus means is that people in the group agree. And when they agree, or basically agree, they go back and they tell their friends, who tell to friends, who tell to friends, who tell to friends. And then soon what you have is you've developed a core foundation of support for whatever policy it is you're looking to try to get passed or trying to get through. Consensus is a much better option than the alternative. And of course, you have behavioral decision-making styles, which are made by people who interact with others and who welcome open discussion. Those are good, but what tends to happen when you use behavioral styles only is that we could sit around and talk about this all day long, and you can tell me how you feel about it, but at the end of the day, we're not really moving forward. So again, I'm going to ask you to take these different decision-making styles and try to apply them to people that you know or have work with currently or have worked with before, and see how they apply and see what you found that worked for you or worked for that particular organization and that decision-making style, and what didn't work. Because I've found, generally speaking, that the way to become a good manager is to figure out what doesn't work than what does work. Sometimes it is an issue of knowing what won't fly with line staff or won't be accepted rather than what is. So again, I encourage you to continue to apply this information to your real life daily experiences. So let's move on a little bit and talk about discretion and prediction. Discretion is the hallmark of our system. We've already talked about that. It allows for individual level assessments in the sense that we can approach people on a one-by-one basis. But what it also allows for is a wide range of variability. No better is this seen than in courthouses, where you might have 10, 15 different judges who might see the same type of case, but who might make 10, 15 different decisions. And while that's certainly within their purview, when you have such wide variability like that, what you have are feelings of, whether it's true or not is different, but you have feelings of impropriety in terms of some sort of discrimination or some sort of prejudice. So discretion is great. It's got a good side, but it's also got a not so good side. There are problems associated with it, and you always want to take into consideration the impact that the variability in decision making will have on how you can carry out the policies and procedures of your organization. So what's tended to happen in different organizations is that because discretion is so variable in its outcome, a lot of people have turned toward more predictive techniques, which essentially allow us to use the past to assist in predicting the future. So if I know that in 9 out of 10 cases X worked better than Y, then it makes sense that the new policy should probably be X rather than Y for all people who meet that same set of circumstances. So where discretion is definitely more variable, obviously if you're using predictive techniques, you are engaging in more one-size-fits-all approaches. Obviously less discretion, less variability, but you're also constrained in ways that often make it difficult to be able to apply individual responses to problems.